Okay, thank you everyone for joining. So we will start now. It's nice to see we have people from different places in the world and attending different landscapes. Thank you for attending. We're really excited about these new funds. That is a good opportunity for locally led landscapes. So first of all, we're going to start with a short video of LandScale, and then we will do an overview of the system and then of the process for the fund. Thank you.
When it comes to sustainability, it can be hard to see the wood from the trees. But by rising above the canopy, we can see the bigger picture. LandScale is a groundbreaking system that gives businesses, NGOs, governments, financial institutions, and donors a new perspective on sustainability. How does it work? Let's take a rural landscape. Whether it's deforestation, water shortages, poverty, or land conflict, our landscapes are under unprecedented pressure. But these issues cannot just be viewed in isolation. They are all connected. Which is why LandScale provides a solution to assess the combined impact of all activities at a landscape level. The assessment framework includes a comprehensive set of indicators which can be tailored to your landscape and stakeholders, while the collaborative digital workplace provides a clear workflow to assess your landscape and generate your own report. You'll also find practical guidance and resources to help you along the way. LandScale gives your organization a bird's eye view, enabling you to gather insights, set ambitious goals, understand risks, and measure progress. Once validated by LandScale, your results and stories can be shared on the platform, connecting investors and supporters to stakeholders in your landscape. The challenges we face can feel overwhelming, but LandScale gives you the power to build trust, find common goals, and attract finance to create more sustainable landscapes at scale. Visit landscale.org to get started today.
So again, thanks everyone, and welcome to the ones who are joining. So this is the agenda for today. We will be going over an overview of what is LandScale and how it can help your organization. Then we will go into how the LandScale Access Funds work, talking about the criteria and the overview, the application process, and then what happens if you are selected. And then we will have some time for Q&A in the end of the session. Please feel free to put your questions in the box down there, and we will answer them in the end of this session. So to start with, I would like to mention who is behind LandScale. So it was an initiative born out of the need for reliable information and reporting and monitoring at the landscape level. That was the whole idea, to have this holistic framework, this holistic way of measuring progress in the landscape level. So it's an initiative by Rainforest Alliance together with Vera and Conservation International. During the development process, we had some other partners that you can see on screen: Proforest, IUCN, Solidaridad, CCBA, NCRC, Eco-Agriculture as well, and our donors, BHP Foundation, of course, and the Walmart Foundation as well. So we went on a development phase, and then we did a number of pilots around the world that you can see some of them on the screen. I mean, some of them are pilots, some of them are users already. We launched the final version of the platform on April this year, but during this process, I mean, it was a process that took around 2.5 years, 3 years, where we were receiving feedback from the different pilots regarding what indicators were relevant for the landscape, for a landscape assessment, how they should be put into a platform, what were their reporting needs, what, in order to build something that was the most useful and the most comprehensive and holistic into a system that allowed the organizations to do an easy evaluation. So yeah, I mean, the final outcome of what is LandScale, I mean, after we went through this development phase. Of course, we developed an assessment framework, like it mentioned in the video. It's a holistic assessment. So we have these 4 pillars. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in the following slide, but the idea is to have a holistic assessment of the landscape. We offer some validation mechanisms in order to make the results more reliable and give more robustness to the final result before they can be shared with potential donors, with government, with potential investors, and give more credibility to the initiatives that are being done in the landscape, and also be able to measure the impact that they are creating. And of course, we have an online platform to facilitate the process of the assessment for the assessment teams. So the idea is that all the work is done through there. The validation is also done in there, and the result can be also be published in the platform. So is LandScale right for you? So I'm going to go into detail about what kind of organizations can use LandScale. So first of all, I mean, the organization wants to understand sustainability in a holistic way, of course. As I mentioned, we not only focus on environment, but also on human well-being, governance, and production. So the idea is to have this really holistic baseline of a landscape, and then be able to do a re-evaluation, a reassessment, and measure the impacts of the actions that are being taken on the landscape level. Maybe it's important also to mention what the landscape is to us, as it may be a definition that may vary. But yeah, for us, as is put down here, we recommend that it's at least 10,000 hectares of extension. We are talking about watershed or about jurisdictions. So the idea is to be able to capture all of the linkages in one same ecosystem. And of course, these ecosystems are big, so they include local communities, local government, companies, etc. The idea is to be able to build these shared goals and take action together. So, of course, it's important that the organization is interested in monitoring sustainability outcomes as well from action that they are taking. These, of course, will lead them to have some solid results and some solid reporting that may enable them to communicate it with potential donors, stakeholders, etc., and also to keep a more reliable monitoring of what they are doing and be able to take decisions on a more reliable way. Another two things that are important to take into consideration is, of course, that the assessment team has access to local knowledge and landscape stakeholders. As I was saying before, I mean, these are landscapes, this is extensions of lands which have the different actors, different stakeholders in place. So it's important that it is done as a maybe locally led, as a community between the different stakeholders in the landscape. And some information will be easier to gather if you have already the relationships with local government, with local companies, etc., in order to make this assessment. So this is a relevant one. And another one is that the organization has the appropriate, the right human resources to conduct the assessment. I mean, it's important to say that what LandScale provides is, of course, the framework, the validation, the training, the technical support throughout the process, the learning materials, and the platform, of course. But the assessment has to be done by the assessment team. So they are the ones responsible. Your organization will be the one responsible for gathering all the data, gathering all the information, putting it into place. So yeah, it will be important that you have the right resources to conduct the assessment. I'm going to go briefly into this, and then I will jump into each specific step. But I would like to mention that after each step, there is a validation mechanism by the LandScale team, just to make sure that the assessment is going according to our methodology, to our guidelines. So in the end, you have a really solid report, a really reliable results. In step number 4, there is an additional validation mechanism, but I will go into detail later on. So step number 1 is about recruiting the assessment team. We have some terms of reference of how an assessment team should look like. Of course, you can review them in detail. We have them in our website, and we can share them with you if you get in touch with us as well, of course. So basically, it's just to make sure that the people conducting the assessment have the right expertise in the different pillars, in the different topics that will be covered in the assessment. Then it's important to set the landscape goals and the assessment objectives in this step as well. And as optional, you can record the landscape partnership. So you can register all of the local stakeholders implicated in this partnership and in this maybe landscape partnership. Yeah. Step number 2 is about selecting the boundary. As I mentioned, we recommend that it is done by jurisdiction or by watershed, but it can also be user defined in an easy way. I mean, it can be done in the platform to delimit the boundary, or you can upload a file and it works as well. So yeah, this is just about setting the boundary. Step number 3, we jump actually into the framework, the actual framework on what will be measured. So the assessment team has to select and add the indicators, the metrics, and also set optional targets if they want to. After this is where most of the work actually, maybe, well, sorry, before I jump into that, this is a high level picture of our assessment framework. So as I was mentioning before, these are the 4 pillars: ecosystems, human well-being, governance, and production. As you can see, there are several indicators underneath it. And of course, you can also access our detailed framework with specific metrics and what has to be measured. This is in our website, and as well, we can facilitate it to you if you want it. But just so you can have a general idea of how it looks like. It's important to mention as well that if there is a metric or an indicator that is not included in the framework, you can add it easily in the platform, even a fifth column, a fifth pillar. But so far, we believe, I mean, it's quite comprehensive. So I think our users so far have not had the need to add a lot of new indicators, but it's possible in case you need to. So yeah, this is where most of the work takes place once you have selected the indicators that your organization wants to measure. So step number 4 is about identifying the data sets, screening the data suitability, evaluating the quality of the data, and then of course generating the results, and then conducting the local review, which I'm going to talk about later. It's important to mention that LandScale is kind of data agnostic, so we can give some suggestions, but in the end, the assessment team will be the ones that choose what data sets they will use for the different metrics in the framework. Talking about the validation mechanism that I was mentioning, I mean, on top of the LandScale validation, which is done by the LandScale technical team, technical experts. First of all, this is the one. I mean, what they will be looking at is basically that the assessment team is following the assessment guidelines, the methodology, and of course, the quality of the results. They will be looking at the reliability of the data set, the reliability of the methodology. So once this is validated, there is a second piece, which we call the local review, where the assessment team will need to choose one local reviewer per metric. This, I mean, of course, there is a single local reviewer. If he has the expertise in several metrics, he can evaluate as much metrics as he's an expert on. He has to be an expert in the local landscape as well. There is some criteria for who these local reviewers are, and they need to be approved by the LandScale team. They need to have expertise and experience in the metrics that they will be reviewing. They have to have the knowledge of the landscape that it's been evaluated, and they have to be independent from the organization conducting the assessment. So we make sure. So basically, what we will ask them is if the results reflect actual conditions in the landscape, and if the data is suitable. And if there is comments by the local reviewer, the assessment team will have to review them. They will have to do the right modifications to comply with the observations. And once it is approved, you can publish. I mean, once you have the LandScale validation and the local review validation, the assessment team is allowed to move to step number 5, which step number 5 is basically generating the reports. The platform makes it really easy to generate the report once you have filled all of the metrics and the indicators. And yeah, after the report is generated, of course, you can publish the results and plan for a repeat assessment. We recommend that a reassessment is done at least every 3 years, but this is up to the organization in order to be able to measure the impact of the different actions in the landscape. Now I'm gonna introduce my colleague Shanti. I'm going to give the microphone. She will go over some examples that we have, some exciting examples that where LandScale assessment have been conducted and how they have been used.
Thank you, Arturo. Well, good morning, good afternoon with everyone. The first case I'm going to show you is about the llamas, Peru. During 2021, Rainforest Alliance conducted the LandScale assessment in 6 districts of this province, Llamas, which is in Peru, in the northeastern Amazon. And here we can find native communities, a protected area that coexist with productive change, such as coffee, cocoa, and even palm oil. So in the process, this is our landscape, and in the process of gathering the information for the LandScale assessment, the team began to hold meetings with different public and private actors, which helps the assessment to take place in this participatory way. With the information that we collected and the results that we obtained, the teams developed several workshops to present the results. And I think that we all know, with information, we can make decisions. And that is what Rainforest Alliance did with other stakeholders. They projected how they wanted to see the landscape in the future. I mean, how they want to see in the mid or even in a long term. And they put together an action plan with goals related to the LandScale pillars that Arturo have mentioned. And also the team and the stakeholders propose activities to achieve those goals. In addition to this action plan and the activities, how we use the information? We use the LandScale indicators as a criteria to develop like a green incentive or like a green credit that rewards producers who follow sustainable practice. Also, we build close relationships with the local government, and they showed interest in the tool and also in the indicators. So we started to work and review the LandScale indicators and how it could be aligned to their development plans. And also with them, with the local government, we propose new policies or even laws that can promote business or activities with this landscape approach. This is for the case in Peru. The second case I'm going to show you is related with San Jose, with Costa Rica. This case was led by IUCN and also with support from local water companies and the water fund Aguatica. The landscape of this assessment was in the central mountain range of Costa Rica and includes also the northern region of the capital, San Jose. There is the name San Jose, Costa Rica. The baseline showed them a positive trend related with conservation of natural ecosystems, especially through agroforestry in coffee plantation. However, they also found negative trends related to water quantity. It was because they identified the causes were migration and urbanization. So they have a challenge, right? Water supply in the San Jose watershed had become degraded and also overstressed. And that puts the capital's population and also the economy at the risk. So In response, IUCN, FONDECOR, and Aguatica have been working with the local water companies and with the landscape communities to implement a new water tariff to fund restoration activities, as you can see in this slide. This tariff will track its progress toward key restoration goals using LandScale indicators. In this sense, LandScale serves as a way for Aguatica to communicate their achievements to existing funders, and why not to attract new members or even new investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shanti. So now I will jump into the LandScale Access Fund that we're really excited to announce and to have this opportunity to offer this fund to locally led initiatives. That's the purpose of it, to enable locally led initiatives to conduct a holistic baseline for their landscape. This is intended to be used by organizations who could not pay by themselves for the fee, for the actual fee. So what it is about, I mean, we have the chance to support 5 initiatives through these access funds, and these initiatives that are chosen for this, they will get the LandScale validated by assessment for only $500 US. Usually the service is $15,000. So I think this is a really good opportunity for organizations to be able to have this reliable baseline and conduct these assessments. There is some criteria that we have for this selection process. The application process, just so you know, is open already. I mean, I will go through it later as well, but just worth mentioning now as well. The deadline is the 23rd of December, so there is still some time for submissions. So going about the criteria, locally led initiatives with clear social and environmental objectives. That's one of the criteria. By locally led, I mean, I guess it's important to as its name says it. I mean, it can have the participation of different organizations, but it has to be locally led. It's also important for it to be in the global south, in landscapes. Yeah, in landscapes, sorry, in landscapes that have participation in global commodities and that are being produced there, and that they are facing significant environmental and social threats. The size, as I mentioned before, I mean, we need it to be over 100 square kilometers, 10,000 hectares. So the idea is to be able to capture all of these indicators of an ecosystem. Of course, it can be higher than that. Just to mention some examples, I mean, in some users are working in landscapes that are sometimes thousands of square kilometers, because sometimes it's several jurisdictions together. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 jurisdictions into one landscape. So we're talking about big areas where you have different stakeholders involved in the assessment. And of course, the organization has to have a commitment to conduct a holistic assessment between April 2023, that's the expected starting date, sorry, and finish it by February 2024. We believe this is the right time to conduct an assessment, so and validate. It's important, I mean, that there is a willingness to publish the results as well after, of course, after local review and the landscape validation have happened. There is still the flexibility. I mean, if there is some sensible indicators that don't want to be published, and of course we encourage for it to be the most transparent as possible, but there is still flexibility if there are sensible indicators that don't want to be published by the assessment team. It's important that you know, but there has to be a willingness to publish the results overall. And also it's important for the organization to have a clear vision of how LandScale can help them achieve landscape goals, how they are going to use the results, who are they going to share them with, maybe if it's going to be part of their reporting towards donors or towards government or to investors. It will be nice to see how it can help them achieve their objectives. And it's also important to mention, I mean, as I mentioned in some previous slides, that the organization has the capacity or the resources to form or to hire an assessment team with the required expertise. As I mentioned, we have some terms of reference of how an assessment team should look like. But out of previous experiences with our pilots doing holistic assessments, it takes between 75 and 150 person days in total to conduct an assessment. If it will be better, of course, if you can go into the detail of the terms of reference and of course, get back to us if you have any question. But yeah, this is really important to take in mind, as it's, yeah, I mean, it will be really necessary to conduct the assessment. And just emphasizing on some cost breakdown, because yeah, there is a LandScale fees, but there is also some factors to take into account when conducting these kind of assessments. So one of them is the LandScale fees. In this case, is going to be the reduced fee of $500 US, but there are some other expenses that might have to be taken into account. They will be variable. They are not related to LandScale. So one of them is the data procurement. I mean, most of it is secondary data. A lot of it will be free, but there may be the need to buy some data sets or to incur in some cost to get some of the data. So it's important to take that into account. This will depend in each landscape and in each situation. Then there is the assessment team time. As I mentioned, is between 75 and 150 person days. This one can be done in-house by the organizations if they have the right people, the right staff to conduct the assessment, they have the time. But sometimes the organizations also have to hire some consulting team to help them. So it's important to take that into account. As I mentioned, this will depend in each situation, but it should be taken into account. And finally, another one is the stipends for local reviewers. I mean, of course, sometimes they may be voluntary, but sometimes they may be paid to they may be paid something to, like as a stipend for their participation as reviewers. Again, this will depend on every case, but it's important to take this into account. So the timeline, the process, as I mentioned, the application process is open now. The application deadline is December 23rd. So there's still a couple of weeks for more applications. We plan to have the final results and the finalists and the final candidates by February 2023, selection of the landscapes. And we expect during this process to sign the agreement with the finalists, with the final candidates, set the kickoff and begin the assessments by April 2023. And as I mentioned before, be able to finish them by February 2024 to publish their reports. So what happens if your organization is selected? I mean, of course, you have to make sure that the assessment team is ready. Like I mentioned, I encourage you to look at our terms of reference of how an assessment team is conformed. You can find this in our website again, or you can just email us and we will send it to you happily. Then there's the need to sign a LandScale agreement with us when you are selected. Just to define the scope of work and the general terms, and pay the reduced fee of $500 and then of course schedule a kickoff meeting where you will meet with the technical team, with the technical experts that will help the assessment team get introduced to the tool and to the process, and set the next steps for the assessments. Now I'm going to jump to the Q&A. I want to introduce Sophie Percy, our Senior Program Manager, who will be answering questions that might come up.
Thanks so much, Arturo, and thank you to everyone for joining today. I'd really encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A section if you have any questions about anything that we've presented or you're considering applying, but there's some things that are holding you back. In the meantime, I'd like to ask if Shanti could just elaborate on her question. If Shanti could elaborate on her response to the question from Ilko, which was about if you usually manage to align all stakeholders once you have the results, and if not, which types of conflicts tend to persist. So Shanti, do you just want to say a little bit more about your experience in Peru?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Ilko. Yeah, so the process, if you want to do it in this participatory way, may took you some time because you have to develop workshops. And yeah, it's true. Sometimes the stakeholders have different goals, different targets related also with the organization. But we have to be like a very diplomatic here, right? Because every information that they give us is important. So we need to be clear with that, but also try to put, as I mentioned before, we have to reach the middle point, right? So in workshop, I remember in one workshop, one time we discussed if we need to use the term reforestation or restoration, right? So with information, we discussed with term used to our action plan. I think that if every stakeholder is open to receive feedback and to discuss, the process is easier. And also that's why I mentioned that a first step is to do a stakeholder mapping, because in that process you can identify which actors are maybe more involved in sustainable activities, or which actor could help you to achieve the goals in common, right? But yeah, it's not an easy process. You need to talk and discuss and also set agreements. Yeah.
Thank you, Shanti. We have one more question about the fees. So yes, that's correct, that the fee to use the LandScale platform and for the validation and the technical support will be only $500 for successful applicants to the fund, instead of the normal $15,000. Do we have any more questions? If not, then I'll just say thank you so much to everyone for joining today. And if you are interested in applying but still have some questions, please feel free to reach out to Laura Leboom or Arturo, and they can provide you with more information. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.